Welcome to the Taking a Breath podcast with Parkermayes.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Taking a Breath podcast. I'm Parker, and I'm excited today because I have a special guest for you guys. Before we jump in, though, I want to make sure that you guys know about the conversation that's going on outside of the podcast, the Taking a Breath community. If you're interested in joining, you can go to flow.page/parkermayes and click join the community there. That's going to be on Discord. We have weekly Zoom calls, and we have chances to do live Q&A with people just like my guest today. So joining me today, I've got Nakyrah Radney. She graduated from NC State's College of Design with a degree in design studies and a business entrepreneurship minor. While at NC State, Nakyrah grew a passion for entrepreneurship through her continued exploration of the arts. With influences from both her minor and NC State's community of entrepreneurs, her startup, Kyrah's Kustoms, was created during her senior year. So Nakyrah, thanks so much for joining me today. Would love for you to share a little bit more about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. So a bit more about myself. As you already mentioned, I graduated with a design degree, but design has always been a part of my life. My dad is a designer in like multiple areas. So art and design was always a thing I was interested in. I started off drawing as like a little kid, and it just evolved into bigger things or different media outlets. But that's my main background in art.
That's awesome. And so when you I know that this startup happened your senior year. And when you initially talk about it, I know that you had kind of always had this background in drawing, but what initially kicked off that idea of, okay, I want to take this passion that I have and actually turn it into kind of a product and a business that I can sell?
Right. So the first shoe that I ever painted was for my little brother. He had asked me to paint some like basic slime Air Force Ones for him. And I had never even painted a shoe before. So I was like, I'll try it. So I did that and he was super excited. And then I had a friend ask me to paint some shoes for him. And he was like, I trust your art. I believe in you. And after seeing how excited he was to see his shoes and just the potential that I had, I like drawing. It's not that hard to put it on a shoe and, people get so excited about it. So I decided to keep exploring and that just ended up turning into a business opportunity for me.
And right now, the majority, or if not all, if I'm understanding, is like specifically painted custom shoes that you're, selling to different like artists and like just friends and those types of things, right?
Yeah. So I do custom shoes and then I tie-dye socks.
Do you see like shoes being that consistent industry? I know you mentioned the Air Force Ones, and I know that's been a big in terms of like painting and customizing, like that's been a big industry. Do you see that kind of continuing, or is there somewhere that you feel like will kind of branch off and kind of create a new product over time as well?
There's always potential to branch off into different types of shoes. I probably wouldn't go into merch like that, just because that's not my thing. But
Sure.
like Doc Martens, other shoes, Timberland, like that.
That's awesome. And that self-awareness to know kind of where makes the most sense, I think is really is good for entrepreneurs in general. Do you so I guess moving back to like where you're initially jumping in, for you not having the entrepreneurship background, I know it's something that you developed, but when you initially kind of jumped in, what was kind of a struggle for you, or what was the hardest part of kind of getting started with that?
There were a few things. I think the first thing was getting an audience, like even a little audience, because I started with an Instagram page and you have to build a following for that.
For sure.
So with getting followers, I had to have enough product to show, like a new portfolio. People are like, you're doing this, but where's the work to show for it? So that was the biggest thing, like getting a decent amount of work out so people could see the craft and what I was actually doing, and then getting a following off of that. And then finding the right platforms to market my stuff and be able to push my content out so people can see it.
where are the places that you're kind of most focused right now in terms of like putting out content? Like where are you seeing the most success for your product outreach?
Definitely Instagram. I'm
Okay.
also on TikTok, but I get a lot more traction from Instagram.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also sell on a platform called Custom Movement, and they've been able to bring me a lot of customers through that.
Wow. Okay, that's really cool. Do you have any advice for like finding kind of some of those more like niche websites? So like the customs website, like is there somewhere where you went to kind of find that? Are there places people can go to find like those new sites, or was that just kind of as you were looking and heard about that?
Actually found it through following other artists, and I was
Awesome.
just noticing in their bios that they were like saying partnered with Custom Movement. So it was just my own curiosity to figure out.
I was wondering because like as I've been kind of doing that, it was the exact same thing, like figuring out, okay, like I know, whether it's podcasting or whether it's like community formation, like those types of things where you start to connect with other artists and you start to see, oh, like this is something that people are using, this is something that's successful, like those types of outreaches can be like the most beneficial. And then you just start getting connected with even more like artists or other creators as a result of that. So I love that. Do you enjoy working as like a one person team? I know that's been something you chatted a little bit about, is like, okay, like having the freedom to do it. Do you think there's potential that you would ever like expand to bring on new people to the team or anything like that?
I'm actually looking into currently is just growing a mini team, even just managing getting the actual idea out and putting that somewhere so people can see it.
I love that. And I definitely have seen value there, whether it's for, like for just small businesses in general, like especially because there's so much focus on it right now. Like that was part of the reason I was curious. Do you feel like there was more of a struggle around like getting started as one person? Is there anything that you found as a like struggle with being a one person team initially?
Initially, no, but
Okay.
now it's getting a bit complicated to manage orders and then just manage, even manage emails and DMs from people. So it's just now becoming something that I've had to think about when it comes to building a little team.
That's really good to know. And so like I relate to that a lot with just having this like, okay, initially like just doing the work, like putting in the focus, it works really well. And then there comes a point if you want to scale it, right? Like some people are just like, oh no, I'm happy just doing my own thing, like totally fine. But I love that idea. Is there something that like, what do you enjoy most about the whole process? Like now we're kind of in this place where you're actually like consistently making sales and you're like creating and have the product. What do you enjoy most about like this whole process?
There's a few things. So I enjoy actually coming up with new creative concepts with the customer. So like bouncing ideas back off of them. And that process is pretty cool. I like the actual painting, but I think most of all, I like seeing people's reactions or hearing their reactions, whatever it may be, or just reading reviews. I had someone send me a video of their cousin. I made some shoes for them and she like was screaming and started crying. I'm like, wow.
That's
Pretty
awesome.
cool. Mhm.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that always feels so good. Like when something that you're able to do like has such an impact on someone else. I love that.
Right.
I love that, and that I can relate to that a lot. Do you in terms of like this coming year, are there anything that you're looking at in this new year that you're excited about scaling to, or new ideas or opportunities that you have your eyes on?
Yeah, so I have a couple collabs with some other like smaller businesses, like smaller clothing lines or just smaller designers that I'm planning on doing. And then my main thing is working on building cohesive branding. So acquiring like good branding materials, whether that be custom boxes or stickers or little keychains. That's what I'm most excited about. I've been working on that for a couple months now.
I love it. Do you feel like in terms of expanding the brand, there's going to be anything like I know there are always the little hiccups along the way. Do you feel like there's any challenges as you continue to scale that you're kind of like anticipating?
Um, yeah, I think, well, one, fully registered, so that's one
Sure.
challenge. And then I've had some challenges with shipping internationally, so that continuous challenge just to figure that out and have
Yes.
that squared off so that can be an easier process. But those are probably the two biggest things.
For young people that are like maybe in college or even in high school right now that are thinking they love this idea of like creativity, is there any tips that you could give them for like how to continually improve their creativity, or how to, if how to think about if they should scale something that they're passionate about into like what you've done, a business?
I would first say to keep practicing and make it a daily thing if it's not. It doesn't have to be for a long time, but like set aside an hour to do it. And if you do it for an hour for 2 weeks or a month, think about expanding. But also look at use your resources, and it could be like a friend around you or somebody who's doing what you already want to do. Um, Look into that, like follow them on Instagram, ask them questions. I ask random people questions all the time, and sometimes they respond, sometimes they don't. But ask people questions and follow people who inspire you. And that would be my biggest advice: is just to use your network, and it's usually closer than you think it is.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so, like for you, specifically, maybe around business or maybe around art, are there any specific people that you are following consistently or get inspiration from in terms of like some of the things that you're doing?
Yeah, so I look at like the artists every week. Usually I get an email from Custom Movement like every week.
Okay.
There's Drip Creations, Major Waves, Sir Castletees, who's another one in Raleigh, actually,
Okay.
like the only other shoe customizer in Raleigh. Main three that I like keep up with, but I also just meet new people, new followers. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the passion for continuing to connect, like because that for just entrepreneurs in general, like there's always this focus on like how can I be meeting new people, how can I be connecting. So I love that you're continually doing that. Do you feel like that during this time with everything going on with the pandemic, like has there been a way that you've been, is it mostly social media that you've been able to connect with new people? Is there anywhere that you're going that is outside of social media?
Right now it is mostly social media.
Okay. And the reason I'm curious is there a way to create like to translate from okay, just like a follower relationship to actual, interaction? I'm most interested in, if someone follows me or if I'm following someone else, like how can I turn that like social media relationship into potentially an actual relationship if it makes sense to do so?
Okay, yeah. So I've had a couple instances where I followed other like smaller custom sneaker accounts, or they followed me and they'll ask me questions about a shoe or like just in general. That's probably my main conversation starter. But I just talked to somebody the other day about tips on registering a business, and I've never met her in person, but someone told me to reach out to her. So yeah, it's usually just via DMs, just reaching out in messages.
That's awesome. Do you ever, something I like to ask, like, especially small businesses or single, because this is something I struggle with. Do you ever feel like, do you worry about competition, or like, do you feel like your space is unique enough that like you don't have as much competition, or what does that look like for you?
50-50. I wouldn't say
Okay.
that I constantly worry about it though, because I get my own customers, and it's about what you can bring to the table. So I don't really worry about the zillions of other custom sneaker people.
And that's good. And because like art is so personal, right? Like it makes sense that you feel that like uniqueness, because really like no one is going to do it exactly like you. So I love that. There's one thing I wanted to ask you about. I know you were a part of a entrepreneurship group, I believe called the Miller Fellows,
Mhm.
that was with NC State. Tell us a little bit about that. Like what did the process look like for that? And are you still a part of that now?
It just ended in November, actually.
Okay.
So the process of like getting in, there's like an application, you have to submit an exact summary of just your business plan, they're always flexible because your business can change. But the actual program was really beneficial. We were able to get talks from people in industries like lawyers or people who are really good in registering businesses or just know how to manage teams. And we worked with a summer camp for high school people who were interested in entrepreneurship.
Do you feel like, so it was that like actually this kind of like group where you guys were bouncing ideas off of each other, or what was the like, what was it like actually being a part of the program?
So yeah, there were 5 or 6 of us.
Okay.
And we had some bi-weekly meetings where we would have updates on our businesses, where we were able to bounce ideas off of each other. So yeah, and we definitely do still meet up too. So that's great.
Do you feel like having that like small group, like it was like, it sounds kind of like accountability, just like a check-in and chance to kind of bounce some ideas. Like, do you feel like that helped you to kind of get where you are today, or how did that improve your, performance over the course of the few months that you were in it?
Right. It's definitely made me more professional in the space,
Okay.
made me more aware of everything that goes into making a business, but also the accountability part is like the biggest thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there an element of like, let's say instead of it being 5 to 6 entrepreneurs from a lot of different spaces, if it was 5 to 6 that were all in your space, do you feel like that would have been more helpful to actually like get some ideas and see what's working? Or did you prefer that kind of like diverse background?
I think the diverse background is way more beneficial than a bunch of artists. I think we would clash, but
Yeah.
yeah, we were all in really different spaces. So we were able to ask each other questions on like, they would ask me about social media and I would ask them about production or like, I would just learn something about the science world. So it's just good to know and be diverse in that space.
Yeah, and it's so like I see so much value in getting those different perspectives, and that was part of my interest is, is there is there a way that, like, from my perspective, as I'm trying to reach out to other business owners or podcasters or anything like that, like, how can I bring the most value to a group like that? Do you feel like kind of the long term, like every 2 weeks, and just stretching it? I guess it was like almost a year now, maybe, that you guys have been kind of in contact and building those relationships. Do you feel like that just kind of long term helps to increase accountability, or does over time it kind of die off? That's kind of one thing I'm interested in.
Um, as of right now, I think it increases accountability. This is
Okay.
just our first month out, but in this last meeting we had, we were saying that we're just thankful that we all decided to keep meeting because it just keeps us on our toes and we make notes and have to think about our milestones that we want to share. So
Yeah.
I would say it increases accountability.
And it keeps you so in touch with your goals when you have, like, you just mentioned it there. It's like, if I know that in 2 weeks I need to be doing this and this, like, it's that like target, like I have to hit that, right? So yeah, I think there's so much value in that. Is there any like stories or anything that you think from like your time in business that you'd be willing to share about either a win, a failure, like anything that you think has been kind of a turning point for you in changing your mindset, anything like that?
Well, I have a failure story. So this was my first international sale,
Okay.
selling via custom movement. And I think it went to Germany. But anyways, their policy is like no refunds or no returns, which makes sense because it's custom work. But I had a customer who overreacted, who she said she overreacted and didn't like the shoe and wanted to send it back and blase blase. So I ended up refunding her. And then she ended up like emailing me and apologizing and saying she overreacted. It was just a mess. But it was a turning point because before then I hadn't laid out my policy like on my page. Like I know custom
Mm.
movement, no refunds, but I didn't say that on my page. So after that, I would go through all of my posts and write no refunds, made to order, like just the specific stuff that can make a big difference. That was a big turning point for me. It was a fail, but it was a lesson learned. So that was
Yeah. And that's so important. Like the lesson learned there. I'm sure like now there's all these new listings that you've got that are not like as a result not leaving you open to potentially like a worse overreaction or something. Like you never know what that saved you from. So that's really interesting. And I'm glad that not glad that happened, but glad that you were able to take that lesson from it, right? As you're kind of going forward, like for lessons learned, is there anything that you're like taking into 2021 that's as a result of what happened with COVID or as a result of like some big impactful change this year that you're going to kind of shift towards something different? Anything that you're kind of changing from the way you did things this year to next year?
Yeah, not necessarily changing, but just something that well, I guess so, but just consistency when it comes to marketing.
Yes.
Um, I would say, pretty inconsistent when it comes to marketing. And I realized that on the 2 weeks that I'm super consistent, that's when I'm like gaining followers and people are DMing me and saying they're so excited.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing that into 2021 with a schedule, like marketing schedule, stuff like that.
I love that. And that's so impactful. Like consistency, I agree with you. Like that will make a huge change. Like it increases the brand awareness. People are thinking about you. People want to see more of you, right? So that's super exciting. For anyone who's interested in checking out like your business, your page, like where can they find more of your content?
Right. So I'm on all social media, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. It's all Kyrah's Customs.
Okay.
And then I'm also on Etsy on Kyrah's Customs and Custom Movement. So yeah, everything's Kyrah's Customs.
Exciting. And for anyone, like I personally have followed your page for like the past month or so now and have seen like your content consistently coming out. You guys, if you're listening to the podcast right now, you have to go check out her pages. Like the stuff that she's creating is really incredible. So I definitely recommend checking those out. And then please, hey, if you're interested in new shoes, we got the hookup. So that's awesome. So for my college students particularly, that might be a move. But
Right.
Kyrah, I really appreciate you coming on today. It has been really cool to hear your story. I love creative small businesses because it's so custom, right? Like your whole thing is so unique, and I love that the way that you've developed it, you've made it your own, and I'm excited to see what happens in 2021 as you continue to build the business.
Thank you. It was really nice talking to you.
Awesome. Cool. And for anyone listening, I'm going to tag Kyrah in the content that we post. So you can also follow us at Taking a Breath Podcast to see clips and highlights every week. And then we'll see you again next week for another interview.
Thanks for listening to the Taking a Breath podcast with Parker Maes.